DJ scream, heavy in the streets.
We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood. We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood.
Good rich.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And I'm Ethan, and today we're catching up on some UFC 288 Sterling versus Cejudo. Just doing a reaction show. What wasn't able to do a prediction show because I was out of town. I was visiting some family in around Sykes, Louisiana. That's close to Monroe and Winfield, and they had no service at all. No internet, no service. At least not Verizon anywhere around that area. But we're back now, and we'll do a little bit of a recap of definitely a reaction of UFC 288 because I was able to rewatch it, and I kind of just made my picks as I went through, and it seems like we're on a heater for bad picks, and it didn't end with this, even just watching the replays. So anyways, we got some appetizers for you, and we're going to get into that right now. So can I get a menu? And so this is a UFC 288 Sterling versus Cejudo, and that was May 6th, 2023. I think I must have watched it. Trying to think when that would have been. I would have watched it on the 7th, so I saw it like a day later, watching replays. And that was held at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. And so with the main card, this was just a big billing for Aljamain Sterling, the champion Aljamain Sterling, and Henry Cejudo, the previous two division champion, coming back after being off for like, what was it, like he was retired since he'd been retired since May 2020, so almost 3 years he hadn't fought and had been retired, and he was coming back and getting an automatic shot at the belt. But anyways, let's get into this main card and my reactions, and I'll sadly go through and let you know who I was picking before the fight, because I tried to stay out of the spoiler alert zones until I was able to watch it live for the first time for me. So anyways, we're just talking about the main card here. So on the main card, the first fight on the main card was a featherweight bout between Charles Jourdain versus Kron Gracie, and that ended up being a unanimous decision, 30-27, 30-27, and 30-27, just across the board. Charles Jourdain won every round, and I had picked. When I saw the fight and before the fight, I was like, I think Kron Gracie is going to win this, and that didn't happen. It wasn't like he got completely dominated, Kron Gracie, but he just wasn't able to really do anything in any of the rounds to cause any damage or be effective or ever get a takedown so he could use his the Gracie Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It was basically just him getting when they were in the stand-up, he was one taking the harder shots and just always kind of coming up short and really not throwing much when they were standing through the entire fight. And then the only chance that he would ever get to it being the fight being on the ground, so he could possibly use his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He was actually having to pull guard, and then even when he was pulling guard, he never got close to getting like an arm or throwing up a triangle or anything like that. There was one point, I think it was in the last round, where he was literally on sit in the sit down position and kind of just moving forward like on the back of his hands and his legs, and he was just throwing like leg kicks at Charles Jourdain. Like how that may have been the most effective offense he had, was a couple leg kicks that he got from the sit down position, and it was just it was just kind of watching like an old school fighter fighting a new school fighter. Like when you think of a Kron Gracie, you think of Royce Gracie with just a great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. BJ Penn, a great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but those guys are kind of obsolete, elitists, guys that are just pros, elite, have elite skill at one uh, art, one art. They're have an elite skill, but he's not well rounded enough to win a mixed martial arts fight, and that was definitely apparent because Charles Jourdain was landing more standing up, and he wasn't giving up his back or getting taken down or anything like that. He was able to defend all that. So I started this event, UFC 288, on a bad note. I put too much trust in the old style of mixed martial arts, because that did not work in this fight, and he had been away as well, kind of like Henry Cejudo. He had been away for a while from the UFC. Yeah, he hadn't fought since 2019, so he's someone that had been gone for a while and then was coming back, even though he's only 34 years old. But anyways, on to the second bout of the card. We have another featherweight bout between Movsar Evloev versus Diego Lopez, and this ended up being a unanimous decision bout as well, which it went 29-28, 29-28, and 30-27. And this was I'm guessing the original opponent for Movsar Evloev had to pull out, so Diego Lopez was like a last minute addition to this card, and to be able to fight Evloev. And Evloev had an undefeated record, so it was a pretty big step up in competition for Diego Lopez, and he started the fight pretty well in the first round. It looked like he had some explosive power and some good shots, and he was landing like early on. But it seemed like Movsar Evloev really adapted to that, and it seemed like Diego Lopez slowed down a little bit after the first, 4 minutes, and then it was just mostly the Movsar Evloev show, with them landing harder strikes and landing more strikes when they were standing up, and then Diego Lopez really could. He seemed like he wanted to try to get it to the ground, and then Movsar Evloev would end up taking him down and just control him for the majority of the rounds. But the thing that Diego Lopez was doing is he was constantly looking for a submission, unlike Kron Gracie, who never really got close to getting Charles Jourdain in a submission. Diego Lopez a couple times almost got Evloev in a armbar or rear naked choke, not a rear naked choke, because he really never came very close to getting his back, but a triangle choke, and then even ended the third round, the final round, having Movsar Evloev in like a knee bar. So he did all this, but he did all this from his back. So I don't really know how many points you get scored for yourself when you're uh, just throwing up submissions for your back the entire time. And he got one cinched in several times, but he just never seemed to be able to finish them. And Mazar Evlov was definitely able to avoid getting stuck into any real danger. But it was really Mazar Evlov, he's a top 10 featherweight. Like, that was an impressive win from him, getting the unanimous decision win. But I was honestly more impressed with Diego Lopez in this fight. And I think I picked Mazvar Evlov in this one. Pretty clear why, because he was the head and shoulders favorite and never really even heard of Diego Lopez before. But so that has me at 1-1 on this card. On to the third fight of this card, UFC 288. We have Yan Zanan versus Jessica Andrade, and this fight started out what you usually like to see from Jessica Andrade fights, where you wanted to see it turn into a brawl, a stand-up brawl, and that's really what it was. And it ended up not going the way I would have expected. If I looked at the scorecards and just how the fight ended, I would have thought for sure that Jessica Andrade got the knockout, but that's not the case. She ended up getting knocked out, KO punches at a minute 20. The first round, 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and it was pretty brutal in regards to how it came, because she was coming forward pretty much the entire time of this fight, and she wasn't able to land anything. Yan Zanan did a good job of like kind of parrying out of the way and avoiding any serious damage, and then she ended up catching Jessica Andrade with a counter punch, and it sent her to the ground. And honestly, what damaged her more was probably, I think I mentioned this on a previous post about mixed martial arts, is that what hurt her the most was honestly how she fell down and her head whipped back and hit the mat and gave her whiplash, and then Yan Zanan landed a couple more hammer fists, and it was over, just like in a blink of an eye. And I've never seen anyone do that to Jessica Andrade. That was really impressive by Yan Zanan, getting the win like that. And I guess that sets up an all China title matchup between Zhang Weili and Yang Zanan, and they're very similar in how they fight. They're very, very powerful women, for the weight class, and have knockout power at that weight class, which you don't really see that much. I think, like, really, when you think of the 125-pound weight division, you don't think of knockout artists, but Yan Zanan and Zhang Weili, they definitely have KO power, as you've seen over the years from these two. I'm trying to think if that may have been actually Yan Zanan's first. It was actually her first knockout in her career. She had 17 wins, 3 losses. Actually, no, she had eight knockouts in her 17 wins. So yeah, it's not something that you see as often as women like Yang Zanan and Zhang Weili getting brutal knockouts like that in the women's division, in the strawweight division. And I mean, I guess you see it sometimes from Jessica Andrade, but in this instance, she ended up being the victim. So I'm be excited to see the women's strawweight title bout between Zhang Weili and Yan Zanan. All right, on to the welterweight bout between Bilal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns, and this ended up being a decision which was a unanimous decision, which was 50-45, 49-46, and 49-46. And that was actually a 5-rounder co-main event. And before I get too ahead of myself, I had picked Jessica Andrade to win the fight against Yan Zhang, but clearly that didn't happen. The complete opposite of that happened of what I would have expected. And then for this welterweight bout between Bilal Muhammad, the co-main event between Bilal Muhammad versus Gilbert Burns, I was going with Gilbert Burns. I was thinking like he had a pretty easy day at the office just like less than a month ago against Jorge Masvidal and didn't take any damage. I thought he would have been in supreme condition to win this fight, but early on, Bilal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns were just in the stand-up, and it seemed like Bilal Muhammad was getting the better of it for the most part, just landing the harder shots and just landing more significant strikes in general. And then Gilbert Burns goes for this takedown. I'm trying to think. I went for a takedown, and Bilal, I think it was on his left side. He went for the takedown, and Bilal Muhammad like threw a knee like at the same time that he was going for the takedown, and it like kneed him in the shoulder, and Bilal Muhammad was able to stuff the takedown at the same time. And after that, between rounds, it seemed as if Gilbert Burns and his corner were talking about how they knew that he was dealing with something or that he was hurt, and it was just really odd. And Gilbert Burns just looked really dejected throughout the fight, through the remaining of the fight. Like it never looked like he was really in any danger of being finished or anything like that. But definitely he wasn't able to throw like any punches with his left. He definitely looked like a one-armed man out there. And Bilal Muhammad pretty much from that point on pretty much dominated it the majority of the fight when it was standing, and had got a couple takedowns and some didn't really dominate on the ground, but controlled at any point when they were going to the ground or if Gilbert Burns was trying to take him to the ground. And that was just a disappointing fight for the co-main event. It wasn't really a big matchup for a co-main event. I guess a lot of people are saying that it was a title eliminator for the welterweight championship, but it was not a great fight. It was disappointing, and I think the majority of the reason for that is because Gilbert Burns got hurt in the first round of the fight, and then you didn't really get to see a full performance, a healthy performance from him. And I picked Gilbert once again. I took an L by picking Gilbert Burns. So at this point on this card, leading into the main event, I'm 1-3. So let's see. So on to the main event. It was a bantamweight title bout between Aljamain Sterling, the champion, versus Henry Cejudo, the former champion, the coming back from retirement champion. Handed a title bout right when he steps back through the door, and it ended up being Aljamain Sterling ended up winning the bout by decision. Split decision, 40, 47, 48, and then 48, 47, 48, 47. So one of the judges had it for Henry Cejudo, the same score, but just flipped around, and that was a 5-round bout. And I pick Aljamain Sterling to win this going into this fight, because I'm not a big fan of fighters and athletes taking long breaks off or retiring and then coming back. Even though it worked really well for John Jones, it didn't work quite as well with Henry Cejudo, even though he looked very competitive in this fight in the few times in the majority of the fight, and he was able to actually get one of the judges to give him a split decision decision or give him the fight. I would say, because one of the judges did give it to him 47-48, thought he won the fight, but really it just seemed like his output wasn't the same as Aljamain Sterling. When you looked at the significant strikes across the board, Aljamain Sterling was had about as double many strikes as him at every portion of the body, head, body, legs. Aljamain Sterling pretty much dominated the significant strikes. And then a couple times that Henry Cejudo tried to take him down, he wasn't successful at that either. His takedown attempts were stopped, and then there was one point in the fight where he almost got Aljamain Sterling's back, but wasn't able to complete any kind of submission. I think Aljamain Sterling had his back towards the end of the first round as well, but nothing really came of it. There was really nothing really significant that happened in the fight that came close to a finish or a submission, knockout, or anything like that. But anyways, I picked Aljamain Sterling to win this one, and he did. And then there was a little bit of a scuffle between Sean O'Malley and Aljamain Sterling at the end of the fight, and then Merab and getting into it, and Henry Cejudo, he also got into it with training partner of Aljamain Sterling, Merab Dashwili, and because Merab Dashwili, Sean O'Malley gave Merab Dashwili, took off his coat and handed it to Merab Dashwili so he could have the little standoff with Aljamain Sterling. And then Sean O'Malley got upset after the little standoff and scuffle between him and Aljamain Sterling. He ended up getting mad at Merab Dashwili for putting on his coat that he'd handed it to him. So that was a pretty funny confrontation, little scuffle that they had there, and I guess that's who Aljamain Sterling is calling out now for his next title defense. So that should be interesting. I still think I'm still not sold on Sean O'Malley, and I think that Aljamain Sterling is probably still heads and tails and just levels ahead of Sean O'Malley, but it should be. I'll probably be watching, I'm sure. But anyways, so we ended up ending the night only getting two fights right, going just two and three on the card, with picking the Aljamain Sterling Henry Cejudo fight right, and picking the Masvar Evlov fight right, and everything else was wrong. But leading into this fight, I was kind of talking about how, at least saying to myself, how I didn't think it was that exciting of a card. There wasn't really any big name fights, only one title fight, and a lot of times, almost every time I say that, the card ends up being great and being exciting. But this one did not live up to that. It did not hold true to that statement and that trend, because this was not a very good card. It wasn't very exciting. It was for the main card. It was just all decisions, one knockout, which was the women's strawweight bout between Jan Zenen and Jessica Andrade. That was obviously the most exciting and the best part of the main card. But hopefully, the next card will be better. But anyways, I think that's all I have for you. So with that, can I get a check, please?